So now it's with great pleasure that I can introduce Remal Salah, who's a senior psychologist, professional supervisor and trainer at the Palestine Councelling Centre, with over 20 years experience in psychological first aid and emergency response work. Remal holds master's degrees in art therapy and in psychological and educational counselling, and as well as a higher diploma in clinical and community supervision. And Dima Tadros is a programs development officer and trainer at the Palestine Councelling Centre, currently pursuing a master's degree in social work at Bethlehem University. To provide some background to the issue of house demolitions as used as an instrument of policy by the occupation, we're also delighted to welcome Linda Ramsden, who's campaigned on this issue for many years, is now director of the UK branch of the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions. So if I could pass over to Linda initially, who will set the scene and also be chairing the conversation after our presentation. Thank you, Linda.
Excellent. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, all of UK Palestine Mental Health Network. I'm really honored to be part of today's webinar. Well, for over 20 years, the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions, ICAHD, has campaigned on this issue. We focused on education and awareness raising, lobbying, physical resistance on the ground, and the rebuilding of Palestinian homes, done as an act of political defiance to Israel's demolition policy. The demolitions are a key, together with massive land confiscation, of Israel's campaign to Judaize Palestine, to transform an Arab country into a Jewish one, to cleanse Palestine of Palestinians. During the Nakba of 1948, and in the years immediately following it, Israel systematically destroyed 530 Palestinian communities, which resulted in the demolition of around 62,000 homes. These demolitions were not done in the heat of battle, but long after the residents had been driven out to take their lands and prevent them from returning. Since then, tens of thousands of homes, mainly within villages, still unrecognized by Israel, have been demolished in a campaign that continues to displace Palestinian citizens within the state of Israel. Then, from the time that Israel's occupation began in 1967 within East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and Gaza, more than 55,000 Palestinian homes have been demolished, and the numbers increase to this very day daily. Israel encourages us to think that these are done in response to terrorism. However, only around 1% or even less of that has anything to do with security reasons. Homes are demolished during military incursion and for administrative reasons. Israeli authorities say that Palestinians don't have permission to build their homes, so it must be demolished. However, Israel rarely grants Palestinians permission for construction on land they own, even on land that has been in the family for generations. And despite thousands of dollars being paid for lawyers' fees and the cost of submitting applications. Israel has a Kafkaesque system of zoning and planning, which discriminates against granting Palestinians permission to build. And meanwhile, Israel races ahead in constructing settlements for Jewish-only populations in violation of international law. Governments condemn Israel for the construction of settlements as well as for home demolitions, which are a gross violation of the Fourth Geneva Convention. But they do nothing to hold Israel to account. There are no consequences for Israel. And so it can carry on with the demolitions that inflict tragedy upon what is now hundreds of thousands of Palestinian lives. Today, tens of thousands of Palestinians hold demolition orders in their hands, and they wonder when the bulldozer will arrive to demolish their home, a thought they carry with them day and night. When demolition orders are handed out, people don't know when the bulldozer will arrive. It could be tomorrow, next month, next year, or even in 10 years. Many Palestinians are lucky. They never know who will be next, thus they live with anxiety. This year, even during the coronavirus pandemic, Israel has continued to demolish Palestinian homes. The United Nations for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs states that so far, 809 Palestinian homes and structures vital for living have been demolished, and this has displaced 963 people. On November the 3rd, 73 people, including 41 children, were displaced when Israeli authorities demolished their homes and other structures in the Palestinian community of Humsa al-Baqiya in the Jordan Valley. 3/4 of that community population lost their shelters, making this the largest forced displacement incident in over 4 years. Humanitarian agencies visited this community and recorded 76 demolished structures, more than in any other single demolition in the past decade. Some of the demolished structures had even been donated as humanitarian assistance. These demolitions were referred to this morning on the BBC's Today program. Another key element, and the final one I'll mention just now, is that after the demolitions, the Palestinians are landed with fines. They must pay for the demolition, and this can be anything from between $5,000 to $20,000, depending upon the size of the home. Well, we know that the Palestinian economy is weak, even more so because of COVID, which has meant that many people have not been able to work, thrusting even more Palestinians into poverty, thus living on less than $2 per day. Therefore, to avoid paying Israel the fines for the demolition, Israel encourages Palestinians to demolish their own homes, and this is a growing occurrence. Israel's repression is instilling a permanent feeling of fear and insecurity amongst its victims, the Palestinian population. These acts are being done purely for the purpose of ethnic cleansing and grabbing the land. Before moving on to hear from today's guest speakers, we're going to show you a 2-minute film clip of the demolition of a home of an extended family in Jerusalem. So, can we have that now, please, Malcolm?
على مدى 13 عاما وقف هذا المبنى شاهدا على أفراح وأحزان عائلة ضمت 4 أسر حتى جاء قرار هدمه. مع ساعات الصباح كانت قوات إسرائيلية معززة تحاصر المبنى.
ما بيطيحوا هيا بيطيحوا.
جاهدت الأسرة لسنوات من أجل الحصول على ترخيص بناء من سلطات الاحتلال الإسرائيلية، ولكن من دون جدوى.
شو بدنا نسوي؟ بدنا نقعد فوق أوعينا على التراب. شو بدنا نسوي؟
تحويشة العمر يا زلمة، تحويشة العمر.
صدمة بدا صعبا على الكبار تحملها، فما بالك بمن عاد من مدرسته إلى ألعابه وغرفة نومه وبيته الدافئ فلم يجده إلا ركاما. يعجز الكبار عن تهدئة روع هذا الطفل أو التخفيف من ألم شقيقته. منذ اليوم لا بيت يأويان إليه. تتواصل عملية الهدم. يتبادل الجنود الضحكات وتحاول الطفلة التخفيف من غضب شقيقها. على عجل استطاعت العائلة إخراج بعض من أثاثها. لا سقف يحميه أو يقيها برد الشتاء.
بدفعونا أرنونة وبدفعونا مخالفات وبيطالبونا بترخيص بأسلوب تعجيزي. فيش ولا أي مواطن بيقدر يرخص بيت.
لقد دأبت السلطات الإسرائيلية على رفض طلبات فلسطينيين في القدس للحصول على تراخيص بناء، وتتقاضى في مقابلها رسوما تعجيزية. ومع ذلك فقد تم منذ العام الماضي هدم نحو 80 منزلا في المدينة المحتلة، حيث الهدم ينتظر نحو 20,000 بيت آخر. سياسة تطهير تمارسها إسرائيل ضد الفلسطينيين هنا في القدس وفي بعض مناطق.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you. And now I'm going to call upon Dima and Remal for their presentation. Min fadlik, shukran.
Thank you, dear Linda. Indeed, this is a very, very hard video to watch, and it clearly demonstrates that indeed it's not only broken homes, but also broken families. The demolition of a home not only destroys a physical structure, but has numerous other consequences. It tears down the family, it increases poverty and vulnerability, and ultimately displaces a family from the environment that gives it cohesion and support. As you have demonstrated and explained accurately, home demolition is a colonization act aimed at debilitating and displacing us Palestinians. Unfortunately, it is imperative that we mental health workers have to intervene to take care of our own people and ease some of this pain that is inflicted. So before we start, I start, Remal and I would like to thank you all very much for being here. And thank you for UK Palestine Mental Health Network for inviting us to speak today. And maybe attempt to give a small glimpse on what our Palestinian families experience as a result of home demolition. As you may all know, in Palestine, we as mental health workers are continuously subject to emergency and crisis situations, urging us to act and provide psychological first aid in order to lessen the harsh psychosocial symptoms which the affected people or survivors experience. Palestinian mental health workers have come to a realization that early mental health intervention eases and lessens the long-term consequences of such traumas. Therefore, we have organized ourselves into emergency teams in every governorate, not only PCC, but also several partners of ours, such as YMCA and TRC, where we collaborate as teams to provide care for the Palestinian population. Today, I will be, as Martin mentioned, I will be assisting my colleague Remal in talking about her experience as a mental health emergency first responder, because her English is a bit modest, and we thought, as to save time, I'll be doing the presentation, but she will be also responding to the questions and giving examples herself from her experiences and from the stories she holds deep in her heart. While she is providing psychological first aid to families and communities affected by home demolition. What we witness when we are intervening with families is that there are always many trauma-related symptoms which are represented on families and individuals following the home demolition. These range from feelings of heightened danger represented by fear, anxiety, loss of control over one's environment. We see many individuals also in a state of freeze because they feel such debilitation and helplessness as the situation is beyond their ability to cope with. There are feelings of guilt, anger, conflicting thoughts and emotions. We see children also who feel withdrawn, they have social difficulties, we see many somatic complaints and concentration difficulties among many others. I think what we think what maximizes the need and the challenge for us as mental health workers is that when we intervene, we're not intervening only with one trauma, but we have to deal with multiple traumas. In many cases, as Linda mentioned, there's a martyr, there's a home demolition, there's a confiscation of the body of a martyr. So what we witness is that it is much more conflict than only one trauma. Also, the family, which is the core of support usually. This unit itself is all traumatized, it's all shaken, as we saw in the video. And for children who would normally be protected and cared by their parents, their caretakers are themselves, in many cases, traumatized and unable to provide care for and containment for their children. More deeply, what demolition presents is a threat of existence to identity and to self. In cases of demolition, what we like to call it at the PCC, home demolition, it's like suicide. One, self-demolition mainly is like suicide. One is inflicting harm on oneself. An example, I think, which really shows and portrays what this means is an example of a man who had demolished their own home to avoid the high financial burdens of having the occupation demolish it. Remal vividly remembers, she told me that while he was narrating their story with demolition, he said, "My home is my body, it's myself. Like while I was demolishing my home, I felt that I was demolishing me, my body, my identity, and my existence." Notwithstanding the dire financial consequences, for us humans, as psychologists, we know that our home is our sense of safety and security. It's our hope for the future. When a person demolishes their home, they lose all of this. They feel anxious, helpless, and fearful about their future. Furthermore, one of the immediate consequences of home demolition is forced displacement of families. The situation not only exposes them to physical and psychological harm as a family itself, but also this goes to the extended family and the community in terms of the psychosocial impact. This is what we see is collective. It's not only part of what one family experiences. As Palestinians, this takes us back to the experience of Nakba. Therefore, we must be aware that the trauma symptoms that arise from home demolition are also transgenerational in nature. Another example of the intergenerational transmission can be noticed when we, as PCC, we are intervening with grandmothers and grandfathers who often talk about and portray images they hold in their memories from the Nakba and Naksa. These images, when there's a new demolition of their son's or daughter's house, they re-emerge in a clear and intensive manner through their current experience. Therefore, we see very high levels of pain and fear arising, as if the previous pain and experience and the current one overlap. This experience is relived. The wound, which is what we often hear from elders, the wound never really healed. It's still opened. With this experience, it is reopened more and more. It is exasperated. Also, it is important to see that this also brings memories to service providers themselves, as many are refugees and sons of refugees. Remal, for example, and if you allow me, Remal, she is also a refugee, and she recalls that when her family was forced out or displaced from their village in Beit Mahsir in Jerusalem, they became refugees in Jordan, first in Al-Karama camp and forced again out of Al-Karama in 1969 after Al-Karama war, and had to go to Amman, which is another displacement. So as a responder, she also has, as responders, we also have to deal with the memories of displacement ourselves, and which is also a painful experience. This is why, of course, we have we've worked on things such as supervision and working in teams to be able to support each other. Another point of view is that with the hassle or with the haste due to the short duration, families are usually given to evacuate their homes. Remal also cannot forget this instant where following the demolition, the children's toys, school books and bags can be clearly seen between the rubbles. She sees this small girl who was screaming very loudly, crying, and pointing at her toy, which was in the rubble. She couldn't retrieve this toy, and in a sense, save it before their home was taken down by a bulldozer. Just imagine this image, which will never be erased from this child's mind. The demolition is taking away everything that is important to her. We know even that what toys mean to children, even adults. We keep our precious toys and even pass them to our children and grandchildren as a form of inheritance. Our toys represent part of our history, which is now being attacked. In many instances as well, the shock is maximized for children. So the demolition occurs when they were in school, for example, and go back to see their home demolished. So imagine this shock. Also, lastly, demolition also affects the sense of family. What we see, recalling what images recalling images from the video Linda just shared. When a father sees their children, wife, older parents screaming and crying, they usually say that they feel helpless. They feel helpless, they can't do anything. The children also see their father getting attacked, hit, pushed by soldiers, and they are unable to protect them. As we know, the father symbolizes a source of safety and protection for the family who supposedly has the ability to defend their house, their children, and family members. This, in a sense, which is very structured, shatters and distorts the image of the father in front of their children and family members, who in our intervention, we often see that they lose trust in them and feel conflicted between who is this person in front of me who is helpless now and how they saw them before all of that happened. This is, again, just a glimpse of what we see families experiencing during the demolition. This is very systematic indeed. This is part of the occupation policy to shatter the Palestinian psyche and displace us. So what we do now, again, after this, all of what we can do as a glimpse of hope within all of this chaos. When we intervene with families encountering the emergency situation, of course, we as Palestinians will not allow the occupier to say that I will provide care or someone else will provide care for our people. We do it by ourselves. So what we do is when we intervene with the families encountering the emergency situation, of course, we start by assessing the immediate situation. We need to network with organizations on the field, such as UNRWA, the ICRC, who provide first-line responses in form of shelter, food, and other basic needs. Afterwards, the PCC counselors and other Palestinian mental health responders do the psychological first aid response, which comes within 72 hours of the emergency or as soon as we are able to access the location. What it aims to do is provide immediate primary support and care to the family members, and also acts as a preventative measure to lessen the likelihood of them developing more severe symptoms afterwards, and to support their ability to go back to their normal lives as much as possible. What we do is we look, we see around us, we listen to stories, and we and refer families to services based on their needs. We help families feel less lost, regain feelings of control and balance, even through small acts that can help a lot, usually, or most of the time. As Palestinian mental health emergency responders, what makes our value added, I believe, is our knowledge of the culture and social context. Being Palestinians ourselves, we are at risk of being subject to these Israeli occupation violations. We are so in the intervention, we are able to be more authentic, intervene and understand from a very true place. We are also very flexible and are able to act sometimes spontaneously, as Remal will mention now. And we are able to adapt our supportive interventions as well as network based on the current situation of the family. I will invite my colleague Remal now to share stories from her experience, or a story from her experience in the intervention in Arabic, and I will be supporting her in translation.
ديما يعني عكستي ايش الاشياء اللي كتبتها بطريقه كتير ممتازه، برافو. حتى جزء من القصص، فانا بفكر يمكن اللي بيميز قوه.
Remal began by saying that she thanked Dima for being able to portray her what she wanted to say very nicely and very accurately. So Dima was thumbs up from Remal to Dima. What Remal was saying that, I mean, the process, what happens is that we, as Dima was saying, we respond usually, and to add a little bit there, we usually get the call from OCHA, which is the humanitarian assistance here, or from UNICEF if there are children involved. They are the ones who usually contact us to do the intervention. So within 72 hours, we usually go, and in PCC, like our also colleagues in the YMCA or the Torture Rehabilitation Center, TRC, or also MDM, usually in areas like Nablus, we usually have within our team people who are allocated for certain areas, so we know exactly. So if it's Shafat, it's Rana, if it's Bet Hanina, so we know by location who should be the one who goes to respond. So we usually call the family and tell them that we are going. We don't like to drop like that. We usually get a number and we call and we say we are going. But what really is important there is that we try to accommodate our intervention to the context that we find. We don't usually ask to have anything special. So if the family is sitting, we sit there. But what we try to do when we go there and look is find someone within the family, if it's the nuclear or extended family, whom we believe is in a better shape. So we try to sit with them and get more information about what happened to the family. And then we ask them who they think is most in need of our work. So they usually direct us, and we begin to find the place where we can have some privacy to talk to that person and ask them, and work through the family to also link them to needed care. So what we do usually is do these 3 visits where we do the immediate care and assessment of the situation. We also try to link the family to the help they need. But what is most importantly is that we also schedule after intervention. So we go and we make sure that if we had given them links or whatever, they are connected and they got the care that they need. And we also look at things that are of immediate care, like the children going back to school, for example. I'm talking before Corona, but you know, going back to school, the community within itself have been able to contain the also the problem, because in many cases what we try to work out is that families or neighbors or, you know, people who are within the community and have means to contain the family and provide them with immediate care until something more long-term takes place. So what is important is we also see who needs more care. We try to give them also individual care, and also we go there and do, you know, follow up and monitor the impact of our intervention.
طبعا بنركز كمان إذا الأعراض النفسية اللي كانت ظاهرة زي الخوف، القلق، التوتر، إذا كان
So what Remal was saying, that we also provide families with answers and information and prefer them to service providers based on the need. So our primary intervention, as Rana mentioned, is followed by follow-up visits and or calls, which are done on a weekly or monthly basis. So families are also provided with numbers of PCC counselors to be able to connect with in case they present any additional trauma symptoms or have concerns. And so individuals in need of more in-depth support are usually referred to PCC clinical department for therapeutic support, or we form support groups and there we work also on addressing the symptoms and supporting families to regain as much as normalcy in their lives before the traumatic event as possible.
Okay. أكيد يعني في قصص كتيرة مؤثرة
Briefly, what Remal was saying is that a lot of the time when I'm intervening, I also can relate to what is happening as a refugee myself. I remember when I see a grandfather crying, I remember my father when we were also displaced and how he felt. I get back these memories, and I think part of my interventions, why maybe as Remal, I like to start with the grandmothers when I intervene, and maybe because I can relate to them. And when I'm intervening, a lot of the times, looking at the transgenerational trauma and how it is represented. In Palestine, we have these grief songs or grief songs that go back to Al-Nakba, where the grandmothers start singing them, and they start doing also some physical expressions such as hitting the face, as saying that this is very painful. And this takes her back to her own experience, and they're singing songs that she knows from direct experience. And what she is doing with the grandmother is usually she is holding her hands, telling her to hit something else so not to harm herself. She is also singing with them, with her, these songs, trying to make her feel that you are not alone, we are together in this, I'm here to support you authentically as I am, as a human. This, of course, not forgetting, this is also very painful for me as a first responder in my intervention, which is why it's very important that we have this supervision framework at the PCC. I'm able also to debrief with my colleagues and get support from the group to be able to continue to provide the support, because this is very painful for us as well. Also, when one of the stories Remal shared was when she went to a family, to a home, and there was this grandmother who was sitting alone in her room. And Remal went to her room. She asked, of course, knowing the context, where is the grandmother? Can I go to her room? She went inside the room and talked to her. She told her, did you get your medicine? Who gave you your medicine? She called someone to help her from the family or from the neighbor to ask them, did she take her medicine? Sometimes Remal also took the medicine and she showed it to her. Did you take this? So she takes care of her immediate needs and tries to take her, as I know the story, Remal also took the grandmother to join the other family members when they are grieving together, so that she is not also alone, and so that they are able to support her. Other instances where also she was able to be very spontaneous, and it is very important in such interventions, is that there was this mother of a martyr whose home was demolished. She was sitting there in silence. She didn't want to talk, and she was in the kitchen washing dishes, cooking, and things like that. So what Remal did was, she went there inside with her, and she started helping her, told her, did you want my help? And then from there, while Remal was helping her wash the dishes, she started talking. She started opening up about her experience, which is very important. One last thing Remal also mentioned, which is also very, very important in the Palestinian context, is the local community. So when we go, a lot of the times the local community is making food for the family. They provide them, they try to support them also with food and things like that. And where instances where there aren't such things, we also go to the neighbors. We ask them to make food for the family. Why is this important aside from the physical care? It's also psychologically, it takes the family out of the feelings of helplessness. They feel that there is support, there's a group, there are people around them that are willing to help them, which is also very, very important in this intervention. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to share with us this, and we will also be able to elaborate more through the Q&A. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Dima. Thank you, Remal. And I'd also like to thank Rana Nashashibi, who's the director of the Palestine Councelling Centre, for her contribution today as well. Thank you, Rana. Not everybody may know who you are, so it's important. We also acknowledge you and your contribution today. Thank you. I've got a question that was sent in ahead of time, but I've also seen a couple of things in the chat line that we can start with. And I would like to call upon Brooke Maddox. She's asked a question. There's already been some response to her. Brooke has been to the center. Actually, she's so she's a bit familiar with your work there. Brooke, please, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah. Hello. Do I have to do anything particular? Does everybody hear me? Yeah. No, my question was, I thought listening to you about my own practice with children and the use of drawing and clay, etc. Clay perhaps being particularly significant since it's a material used in construction. And I was wondering if the counselors use artistic media to in the sessions, and what these drawings look like. What do they show? The link between body self and the house. I did get a partial response from one of the participants. I also just had made an association thinking about how close this experience of house demolition is to the mourning process. And I was thinking how the grief songs sound like the function of the Greek chorus in Greek tragedy as a catharsis for the community. And this sort of accentuated for me the aspect of the mourning aspect and how to treat mourning. So those are just some thoughts. I thank you very much for the fascinating contributions.
Remal was saying that in the first respond, Brooke, we don't usually work a lot with the artistic. We work mostly in the linking and making sure that there is basic issues are there. for the family, and that there is linking, and that they feel that they have the support in the basic issues. But we do that later, especially when we feel that there is more traumatic symptoms and freezing or debilitation. So we work a lot with the hands, with the body, with the voice, everything that we feel, especially in the body where we feel the trauma is being, you know, like stored and embodied, if you like. But again, with the children, we usually, when we go and we know that there are a lot of children, there are usually the team which work with the adults, and then another team works with children. And we do have like a kit with the colors and everything that we carry with us, and the mat. So we have our mat and our kit of working with the drawing. So usually some of the team goes and work with the children, and with the children in the beginning, it's easier to also work with the art and get them to draw and play and tell stories. Remal talked about a story in Jabal al-Mukabbir about one child there who, after 10 days, we were still going there and taking care of the family. The child refuses to go to the school, and he wouldn't say why. He just refused to go to the school. So everybody was quite you know, like keen of having him go to school, you know, to go out of this, you know, like this environment and so on. And the child refused. But then bit by bit, with the with the volunteers who were there and his drawing, by him drawing, they discovered that the main fear there was that because his father was the martyr in this, what we said, the multiple trauma, the father martyred, and there was a demolition of the house, and there was a confiscation of the body. So the child's main fear was that the body will be brought back to the family, and the father will be buried without him saying goodbye to his father. That was his main fear, and that's why he didn't want to go to school. Especially that, you know, when they release the body, the Israelis like force the family to bury the person in a few minutes with very few members of the family present. So everything is done in a rush, and the child knows that. So he wanted to stay there and not lose the opportunity to say goodbye to his father. That was only revealed when we saw his picture, where there was him and the father, and they were separated as if, you know, they're not close to each other. And that was his main fear. And the only way that we could get him to go back to school was that we asked his principal, the school principal, to write him like an official letter promising that the minute that the body is released, he will take him by the hand and take him to his house, and that he will do it personally. Remal was also saying that usually when we go to the house, to the rubble where the family is staying, we try to work out through whatever we find in the environment. So if the issue is about moving, we try also to work with the food, with the preparation of food, because again, we feel that this is also some type of artistic expression where people cut tomatoes, cut cucumbers. When in Silwan, with a certain community of women, we did the baking and the knead. So we did the knead, and they were working with the flour and kneading and doing a pastry. That was also one form of how we worked with whatever is in the environment to the most important thing is to get the people out of the situation of helplessness.
Thank you. I just want to say something quickly. There are some comments that have come into the chat line. They are in Arabic. And so if these are things to be communicated to everybody, somebody is going to have to translate them, please. I've seen 3 questions here. Well, one of them, as I said, came in early. There's a question, I'll call upon Martin in a second because he would like more information about a demolition itself. And there's somebody, something else from Dara about, again, referring to after a demolition. But I'd like to highlight something which came in from Annie O'Gara in advance of today. Annie represents protecting Palestinian families. So she's working as a campaigner here in the UK. She sends her apologies. She's not able to be with us because she's attending another event in support of Gaza. So she's in a live link with them at the moment. She wanted to start, first of all, by relating a message to the UK Palestine mental health work and just how helpful she's been finding these sessions. She's learned so much from them. She then writes, we hear about PTSD, post-traumatic stress, but I have read about the demolition before the demolition, a concept expressing the traumatic anticipation of home demolition. Can you expand upon that? It made me wonder, you know, I talked about when Palestinians hold demolition orders in their hands and, you know, they know something could happen to them. Could one of you answer that, please?
Yeah.
ايش السؤال دي؟
Should we go with this, Linda, or should we first go with Martin's questions? So I might say something here, but I will translate first to Remal.
فهذا يعني بيكون واضح عنا جدا الأعراض.
Yeah, this is, I mean, this is something that we see all the time. Before I also translate what Remal was saying, I also want to share with you an experience I had in Rafah a few years ago. And that was, you know, in the Rafah camp, there were families there who had experienced 4 types of displacement, the same family, you know, going from one place to the other. And there was, you know, like demolition and demolition and demolition. Of course, there was the Nakba, but then there was, even within the camp, there were series of demolition. And when I was sitting with this family, we're talking about the demolition, one of them told me that actually when the bulldozer came, it was a relief, because he couldn't take the anticipation. This high agitation due to the anticipation of when will it happen? Will it be today? You know, this all sense of unpredictability. And again, as we said many times, and also Remal mentioned, this unpredictability is intended. It is systematic policy, so that you will feel all the time that you don't have any type of control over your life. So you are in a continuous sense of fear, you know, like your primitive mind is the only one operational, because you're always under stress, that fear and anxiety, because you don't know where the blow will come. So you're all the time agitated, you're all the time anxious, stressed, psychosomatically burdened, because you feel like all your body aches and so on. And it's all because you can't do anything. You are in a position that whatever you do, it's a hopeless case. So in the time when, for example, what Remal was saying, that what we found that that period is a period where there is a lot of problems that happens within the family. There are a lot of you know, like quarrels that happens between the couples and the children themselves, because everybody is in highly agitated, and they're all, you know, like kind of like displacing the anger that is supposed to be going towards the Israelis that are making their life miserable towards each other, because each one feels that the other can help and they're not doing enough. And there's always these lawyers that keep promising, okay, we've postponed it, it's not going to happen, but then all of a sudden you see the bulldozer on your doorstep coming and taking out your house. So that state is very bad for everyone. Usually all the family within, I mean, the family structure is actually all hit, and everybody is in high anxiety. So there is a lot of problems that happens there. To connect it maybe to what Martin was asking too, is that actually there is no time frame. Yani it can be that they are given 1 hour, and usually there is one pleading or one plead or whatever, and there is a court case, and then the last how do you say, verdict comes in the morning, and within an hour the bulldozers are there. So some of the families, they don't really have time to take anything more than, and we were told that by many families, they don't take more than money, maybe some jewelry, and some of the very, very important documents, which usually they stash in one place where they put them together, because they're always afraid that the bulldozer will be there. So it's rare that they have time. It's rare that they know in advance. And sometimes, to be honest with you, sometimes they might know, but it's also an act of treason, of giving up, when we begin to pack and put away the house. It's like we're resolved to the fact. So some people resist that act because they want to resist that kind of helplessness, where we are as if we are like obeying the order. And it's an act of resistance and resilience when we keep the house as is, and we don't do anything for it, as if we have already complied with the orders of the occupier. So
أنا بصراحة كنت بدي أسأل سؤال عن تقريبا نفس الفكرة.
Hind was asking also something similar, Martin. Is it that in every case that it's sudden? It's usually sudden when there is a martyr, of course. And I mean, there is a martyr and it's sudden. They just go and demolish the house. This is the collective punishment that goes with the martyrdom. But in the cases where people kind of know that there is a demolition going to happen, do we intervene in the meantime to ease the situation and get the family to be prepared for that? Or it is also like the act of resilience not to comply? That's what Hind was asking.
أعتقد أن أنت جاوبتي هذا. يعني هو ما في مجموعات إنه قبل، عادة إحنا تدخلنا بكون بعد.
And what you are mentioning is very important. I think it is also it is part of what we do, is not only to talk about this, but to come out with an action, with concrete actions as much as possible to be able to stop it and counteract these horrible violations. So coming to what Remal was translating from Hind's question, that our interventions are usually done afterwards, after the the demolition happens or the emergency situation. It could be partly because as Palestinians and as organizations, we are in this state of, I don't know if we can say denial of that we will not obliged with the occupier. However, with what also I wanted to add something that what also we did is that a lot of the times we work with the communities on the grassroots level to allow them to be prepared for emergencies. We do a lot of emergency preparedness with the communities, mainly the CBOs and the community committees in the most at-risk communities. So what we did, we helped people prepare lists of things that they have to, for example, to prepare and to take out when a home demolition happens. So this is part of the preparedness. But in terms of psychological, as in support groups and things like that, we think this is also something. Thank you for the question, and we will take into account and maybe think about for future development.
It remains to be something conflicting within us. I mean, is it our role to prepare people to home demolition as mental health workers? It's as if adding more pain to the pain, also for us as mental health workers. Is it the idea is to just save what can be saved, or also work on stopping it from the beginning? I mean, from the root causes, like we always say. I mean, I thank you, Linda, because what you are now asking people to do is to help us deal with the root causes. Yeah. True that we mental health workers try to ease, but definitely if we want to make a change, it has to go to the root causes. This has to be stopped. I mean, occupation has to end. This is the first thing. That's the most important, but also not to allow Israel to continue without also being punished for its violations. And these grief violations, which we know why they're doing it, is also, again, going without any, without any punishment. And we should work to stop it and to hold Israel accountable for all these violations, and among them, of course, home demolition. We try, but we are in that conflicting situation. It's a dilemma. It's a dilemma. Do we work on getting the family to take away all of that and save what they can save? I mean, a colleague of ours in the center, his house is now being threatened of being demolished. He came to me and he told me, I'm in a dilemma. They're telling me, leave your house now in this location. We will relocate you to another place where supposedly the alternative is to have houses that are like apartment buildings. We can give you another place there where this is zoned, the area is zoned, but you will be giving up a house and taking an apartment, and you have to build the apartment. And this one we will demolish. So we will demolish, but give you a guarantee that you will be given a place in the zoning, in the area that is zoned, but again pay for another apartment in an apartment building. So he came to me and he was in this dilemma, and I was in a dilemma. What can I tell him? Yeah, save yourself. He was telling me, you know, I save myself, maybe have a place in a zoned area, but give up my house. But this is against my sense of resistance and staying on my land. This is my land and nobody can force me out of it. Or should I help my family by not putting them in this whole crisis? what would you tell them?
Yeah.
What would you tell him? I really didn't know what to tell him. I told him, go with what your heart tells you. But what would you tell him?
Yeah.
I mean, imagine. So again, with this also, do we tell people take out your furniture to save a few pieces of furniture where everything else is going to be lost? It's a dilemma.
It's a dilemma. It is heart-wrenching.
Do we accept an alternative? For example, to save ourselves, Palestinians, we take Jordan to be our alternative country. Do we? Of course not.
No.
Palestine is our home. No. It's not a matter of where we find another living place. It's our home. I mean, nothing can be compensated. Nothing compares to our home.
Exactly. As we've said earlier, this is settler colonialism. That's what it's about, the ethnic cleansing, settler colonialism.
Linda, you're saying something, but we can't hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear? It was settler colonialism. Yes, sorry. I was mentioning settler colonialism. I wanted to call upon Dara and Heba to put their points very quickly and to gather to you and quickly, because it's nearly time to finish, although we can go on a little bit. I'm concerned because one of our host administrators has got to leave shortly, and he's got a slide that needs to be put up. So, or if that slide could be sent over to Graham, please, to be put up. If Malcolm has to leave, I'm really sorry to have to do this administration here, but I hope that can be sorted, please, so I can call upon Heba, and then immediately after that, Dara, to make their points. And then if you could comment on that, then I must call upon Guy as well. So, okay. I hope that can happen. Okay, Dara and Heba, please. Can I hear from you?
Okay, well, Dima and Remal, thank you so much. And Linda, thank you so much for your work. Incredible, very, very moving. And I just hugely appreciate the work you're doing with actually embodying trauma in a way that you're finding natural ways, washing dishes, cooking together, bringing the body out of the frozenness of trauma back into reconnection with life and community. Fantastic work you're doing. My question to you was, do families ever ask you to return to the site of their demolished houses for a ritual of remembrance or separation? Do they feel the need to collect a stone, sand, any symbolic object to hold on to their homes? Thank you.
Dara, are you still with us, Dara?
I am. I will say it in Arabic then, so it's easier. I want to introduce myself first. My name is Dara, and I'm a third-year BA psychology student, so I'm still new to this world and learning bit by bit. So my question is, and I'm going to say it in Arabic. So يعني بعد فترة من حدوث
I think what Remal just said, Heba, answers maybe your question also, because basically in our case, people don't leave the place. They stay. Usually they put the tent, or they usually have like a mat or something, and they stay on the rubble. It's after a very long time that people leave the place. And in many times, the people all the time in their mind that they're going back and rebuilding their houses. And we've seen that in many cases where houses were rebuilt and they were demolished, in certain cases 4 or 5 times. For example, in Araqib, my colleague is saying, you know, like I think 40 times or so it was rebuilt. It's a village in Naqab. So no, the people always, it's not that they just want a memory, they're there, they stay. And there is a lot of insistence.
خربت قانا بقول لك صلاح اسمها.
خربت قانا. So there is a lot of insistence that we will go back and rebuild our houses and also use the rubble to use it to rebuild our house. So they have that insistence. So it's not just a memory, it's that insistence that they will go back and do it. And for Dara was asking whether in the people do show more helplessness or they show more resistance, and Remal answered that it depends. I mean, each family or each individual is different. Do we as mental health workers encourage them on resistance or helplessness? Of course, we go with them again to work with them on their abilities, on strengthening. We're very much in a strength-based approach. So we work with people on locating and being able to solidify their strength, and through their strength decide on their future. We never dictate anything. We just go with the strength and we build their strength, and definitely with their strength comes the resilience and resistance. But our approach is very much strength-based, which is getting people to see how they can go out from the helplessness and into a sense of control over their environment.
Thank you, Rana.
Rana, excuse me, Rana.
Zaki, I don't know who Zaki is.
Zaki, I'm Zaki from Gaza. I'm social worker in UNRWA.
Hello, Zaki. Did you want to make a point?
I wanna thank مركز الإرشاد to this. If Rana assist me to translate from Arabic to English, excuse me.
مرحبا زكي. Go ahead.
رنا بس بدي أشكركم كتير على هذا.
Zaki said that he thanks us and thanks the efforts that is done now to help the families that are in crisis, because he is himself a refugee. Zaki lives in Gaza, and Zaki is our colleague from Gaza working with UNRWA. And he says that unfortunately, when they had to go through this crisis in the Nakba, the families then, they didn't have that type of support to hold and contain and give that type of intervention. Of course, I mean, UNRWA gave the material, but that all the psychosocial was not part of the help that our refugees and displaced people from Nakba were given at the time.
Yeah.
Shukran, Zaki.
Terrific. I mean, how powerful this has been today to hear from you as we have done, to have this great insight for the whole violation done against the people, your people. Before I say anything else, I'd like to call upon Guy Shannon, who's part of the UK Palestine Mental Health Network. As I said, we now who have listened in on this session have to go away and act. We've got a responsibility to you. So Guy, can you unmute?
And
tell the people what you've been working on here, Guy.
Thank you very much, Linda. And I know we're very short of time, but I have to spend a few seconds just paying tribute to Remal and Dima and Rana and the PCC, but to all Palestinian therapists and social workers that are here, Zaki and Gaza as well, and to pay tribute to the work you're doing in supporting families. And in this case, these families that have had this terrible thing done to them. I have been over to run training courses in Palestine with the Palestine Councelling Centre. I've also run training courses for an organisation in the UK called the NSPCC. And I'm going to focus in particular on a small campaign, really, in connection with the large scale of this problem. And that's here in the UK. The NSPCC stands for the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. And it's a very, very important organisation in the social work world in the UK. It's 140 years old. And just to give you a sense of how important it is, I'm a social worker and a therapist in the UK. The first time I ever heard of social work is when an NSPCC social worker came and spoke to the school that I was at about 40 years ago. So the NSPCC, it's very important, and it's accepting large donations of money from JCB. So JCB is an organisation, a company that builds bulldozers and industrial machinery. And you can find out about the JCB and what their bulldozers look like by going on the amazing ICAHD website and go on the campaign section where you can learn about the campaigns that ICAHD are supporting about home demolitions. And you'll see photographs of JCB bulldozers in the middle of demolished Palestinian homes. The NSPCC have accepted millions of pounds of donations from JCB. So there's a campaign happening in the UK about this, and the group Protecting Palestinian Families, who Linda mentioned earlier, are at the front of this campaign, and there's lots of information about it on the ICAHD website under the campaign section. Protecting Palestinian Families have made contact with the UK Palestine Mental Health Network and also with the Social Work Action Network, which is a group of campaigning social workers here in the UK. There are open letters that we've written, the Mental Health Network and the Social Work Action Network. You'll find links to those letters on the ICAHD website. I'm going to try and share my screen now with the slide that Linda mentioned. Can you all see that slide? I hope so. I mean, this slide is really aimed at people here in the UK, I guess, because it says write to your MP. So write to your MP about this. Call for the NSPCC to stop accepting donations from the JCB. The Protecting Palestinian Families group have written and organised, together with the Mental Health Network and the Social Work Action Network, a letter ready to be sent to the Guardian newspaper, the British newspaper, The Guardian, and anyone connected with child welfare, either as an individual or a group. If you're a therapist, a social worker, you work with your youth worker or a creative worker working with young people, you can email Sharon. I'm going to put her email address into the chat as well, where you can copy it more easily, I think. And you could have your name put on that letter to The Guardian. Also write to the NSPCC. On the ICAHD website, there it is, ICAHD.org, you'll find the details of the NSPCC and how to write to them on that website. So let me just add Sharon's email address into the chat. That's the person, Sharon Green, that's the person to email if you're involved in child welfare. You don't have to be in the UK. If you want your name to be added to the letter to The Guardian, email Sharon. I'm now going to put my email address into the chat. As more social workers in particular, not just social workers, other mental health workers, as more social workers and mental health workers discover that the NSPCC, whose job is to prevent cruelty to children and whose slogan is that every childhood is worth fighting for, they seem to have missed out Palestinian childhoods. So as more social workers discover this, are shocked and scandalized by it, they want to do something about it. So we'll hope to get at least a letter, if not an article, into a professional social work magazine in February. There's also a conference taking place online, the NSPCC are hosting in March, with the chief social worker in England attending and other quite well-known people in the social work and mental health world, academics, were thinking of lobbying these people about their attendance at an NSPCC conference. So that's not organised yet, it's an idea. But if you're interested, if you're a health or social work professional here, please feel free to email me. There's my email address, and we'll see what we can do. Okay, thank you, Linda.
Pleasure. Excellent. Thank you so much, Guy. And I do hope that all of our Palestinian friends are encouraged by that, these specific actions being taken. Again, I just encourage people to write to their parliamentarian on the ICAHD website. We have a lot of information on the overall subject of house demolitions. We've got guidance provided in how to engage with your MP, get to know them, how to write to them. We have sample letters on the issue. Do engage with ICAHD overall because of what we are doing on this issue and our terrific collaborative actions we're taking with the UK Palestine Mental Health Network. For me, on behalf of ICAHD-UK, I'm so grateful for this opportunity today to explore this issue with you, to learn from you, to take our guidance from you as we go forward to try and end this policy. I would like to say goodbye, and now it's for me to hand over to Martin to end the session. Martin, thank you. Thank you.
Hi there. I'd also,
obviously,
I'd just like to echo what Guy and others have said in our appreciation of what you shared with us today. Been a very powerful and extraordinary, eye-opening experience being part of this. There's one image that stays with me from, well, lots of images actually, but actually there's one from that video earlier on, and it's of the forces of the occupation laughing together while the demolition is taking place. It reminds me of a comment made by Stan Cohen in an amazing book called States of Denial, where he says that in all the demolitions that he was present at, he never saw a soldier feel any shame, even if there were journalists and internationals present. And I think what this tells us is something of the rooted racism that in this culture, which is necessary, I think, to pursue a settler colonial process. And I think that's really worth underlining, because the framing of our activism, you know, is really important to be very clear, I think, about what kind of framing it is, the nature of the beast, if you like, and why decolonization has to be at the center of this. So I'd really like to thank everybody again. There's one more cheerful message in a way. I'd like us to send birthday greetings to Angela Glendenning, who's 86 today and who has been a redoubtable campaigner for Palestinian rights for many years. She's a wonderful, you know, model and ideal, so that's fantastic. Otherwise, I hope we'll see everybody again on the 9th of January. In the meantime, I hope we all and everybody has a peaceful and secure, I wish we could ensure that, but hopefully people have a peaceful and secure New Year period, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next year. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Happy
New Year to all. And thank you very much. We are always thankful to UK Mental Health Network, UK Palestine Mental Health Network, and all our friends who are with us. And we're always thankful for you for arranging this wonderful platform that we can come and talk and share about our experiences. As much as it's important for you to listen, it's also important for us to speak and put the word out about what's happening. So thank you very much.